All right, Robbie Simpson, welcome to the Single Track Podcast.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Before we get into Cape Town, I'd love to get some background for the listeners that may not be familiar with you. If I understand correctly, you're based in Northeast Scotland. And I guess my first question is, have you found that that area of the world is conducive to the training that you need to do to be successful on a high level? Or do you find yourself needing to go on sort of like training camps around the world to get more specificity in?
Yeah, you're totally right there. Like, I like living in Scotland. I think it's a great place, and that's where I grew up. And there are great trails and mountains to run on, and some challenging conditions. But to be honest, you're lacking the altitude, specific training, heat, all those things. So I do spend a lot of time of the year going abroad to train. But that's nice if you're able to do it. Yeah, and I can keep a good level of training at home. It's sort of in between. You can do some good road training, some okay mountain running, but nothing quite amazing in both. But yeah, generally it's pretty good.
What's your lifestyle like? Do you do this as an athlete for Adidas Terrex? Do you do this full time, or do you have other careers and responsibilities on your plate?
Luckily, not too many responsibilities in a career or anything. I've done bits of coaching and things, but mostly I've managed to find a way of just running and traveling, which I'm very grateful to do. I found a way to make it work and be very flexible, because I think it'd be really difficult to do this well. With a job, you'd be reliant on someone giving you time off and things like that. And yeah, I think it's just good to do it properly with as much time as possible, or to then just do it at a level where you accept that you can't do so well.
I was doing a bit of research for this episode, and you might have to fact check me here, but if I understand this correctly, you have 10 Sears in all finishes, and I think a bunch of second places in there. And if I remember correctly, you had this kind of legendary finish where I think you were in the lead with like 500 or 600 meters to go, and I can't remember the runner's name, but you got overtaken in that last bit there. That's one of the most competitive races in the world, like at any level of trail and ultra running. Have you figured out a formula at this distance that you're confident works? Like, do you think that there's like a right way to train for all these races on the Golden Trail Series?
No, I think there's loads of different ways. So I've done the race 10 times at Sears and Al, and I've ran, apart from this year, it was quite consistent for a lot of years. I had 8 years of more or less very, very similar positions, very similar times, and that was 8 completely different ways of training for it. So to begin with, I was doing really short distance running, uphill only races, like 1 hour long, 10K stuff. And then I went into doing some road stuff. I could still go from the road running into doing that and run exactly the same time. Then I went into more ultra, not really long, but 50K up to 80K. Then was still able to run almost exactly the same. So I don't know if there's a secret formula. There's certain things you have to be able to do, but I think actually in a race like that, you can do it from any angle or preference. You can still find a way to perform well in 30K.
Sears and All is obviously, like I said, one of the most competitive races in the world, bar none. You've faced people like Killian multiple times. I've always been curious, who have been some of the toughest competitors you've faced, not just in terms of like their raw physical talent, but maybe also in terms of just the competitiveness they exude and how mentally tough they are in the most critical sections of the race?
Yeah, for sure. Killian, I think, is the best one at that, because there was a few times where I was in front of him at parts of the race, and you think maybe this is the time, this is when he's gone. This is my opportunity to make the move and to make the break. But then you get the feeling that he's just letting you do that. Like he could be in front of you if he wants, but he's just chilling for a little while, lets you get ahead, and then you think you've got it, but then he still claws you back. So yeah, for sure, Killian number one. And then Petro Mamu, he was the guy who overtook me 500 meters before the end that time. And again, I was so sure. There were a few problems I had in that last part of the race, but it's when I passed him, it was about 5K to go, and I was thinking he's absolutely done. He's nothing left. He was asking me for a gel. I gave him my last gel, thinking, I'm not going to see him again.
No way.
And then he got a second win, but in that time I was really struggling with the heat, and I started I was really confused, and I was all over the place mentally and wobbly legs, and then I collapsed at the end. So I was really not in a good place, but I couldn't believe he made that comeback in the last few K. I was so far ahead, and I thought, this is done. I can jog it in, but he wasn't done at all. So he'd be number 2, and then third I think would have been John Albin, actually, not in Sierras and Al, but when I raced him last year in OCC, and again he just wouldn't give up. He just was relentless, always fighting, and then he did, take the win in the end. So yeah, it's a lot of these guys in the sport.
Well, it makes me want to ask you, and for context, you're the last time I followed you earlier this year, you were coming off a podium finish at OCC. I think it was your second podium finish in as many years. You said it took a big mental effort getting back into racing mode after a significant rough patch in the middle. And based on what you said there with like John Albin, for example, at the highest levels of the sport, do you think it's possible to compete purely based off the fitness you've built in training, or is it inevitable that in a race environment there's going to be like a significant amount of mental work needed to push through and to compete?
That's a really good question. I think in the shorter distances it is more fitness and specific training, all these sorts of things. Even in Sierras and Al, like a lot of it comes down to that, because it's only in that, say, 2:30 time. It's not so much time, and it can be hot and things, but less can go wrong. But certainly in OCC, just going over 5 hours for me, like the longer it gets, the more things there are that go wrong. And even if it's with nutrition, or last year I took a wrong turn at one point, which was annoying, but that is just always these little things, and it's never plain sailing. Yeah. If you're lucky, then yes, it's just the fitness, but yeah, weather conditions, all sorts of things like that, which just makes it more exciting than just, otherwise who's going to win a lot of the time before the race starts.
Moving to Cape Town, what brings you to the race? Like, what's the appeal, the inspiration, the motivation for being here?
Well, I've never never done a trail race in Africa at all. I've heard a lot of good things about Cape Town and about the running here. So 2 of my teammates are from South Africa who joined this year, Bianca and Tony McCann. And they were telling me about the race, and they said, you got to come down here, it's really good. And then I thought, like, well, it's a good time of year, because in Scotland and this time in November, it's freezing cold and wet and windy and dark. And I thought, well, this season, I didn't feel quite satisfied with the summer, if I'm honest. I had a bit of an injury in the spring, and getting into the racing, I felt like there was more to give. And then when this race came up as once supported by Adidas Terrex, I was thinking, get me there, I'll do it. And especially being able to come here for a few weeks, I think I would really struggle just coming straight from Scotland to race here, with the trails being as they are and the heat. But having the chance to come out 4 weeks before was just a deal breaker. Like, yeah, absolutely. It's just a good experience. I think you have to go and try races that are a bit out the comfort zone as well. And this is exactly that.
Follow up to that, does it matter to you that the races you participate in are affiliated with like a larger event series like the Golden Trail or UTMB World Series, or do you have other reasons for why you pick races?
I'm not bothered about what banner they come under. I just races that look good, sound good, and kind of fit with my own plans, whether that's with the calendar, whether that's with the sponsor saying it's a good idea. Like, if they tell me it's a good race to do and it works for me, I'll do it, because I'm not very fussy. Like, I like going back to Sierras and Al because it's just one I've been to a lot of times. But otherwise, I'm keen to try new races, and I'm also a little bit careful about what distances I would do. Like, I wouldn't go into 100-mile or 100K at this stage unless I knew a lot about the course. But for like a 50K, like, I'll give anything a go, probably, unless it's like a sky race. But yeah.
I was checking out your Strava. It looks like you've been in Cape Town for 3 weeks now, getting to know the course. Can you talk about what the day-to-day has been like, and just maybe your thinking process for getting out there so early pre-race? Is that something you do for a lot of races?
If I've got the choice, I always like to be out somewhere for at least a few weeks. So normally there's 2 things. It's either getting used to altitude if it's a race that's going up quite high. That's not an issue here, luckily, but it's more the weather conditions. Close to freezing temperatures at home, or just a lot colder. So here it's not going to be very hot, but it's certainly too hot for me to come for Scotland and still perform well. So that's the main thing, and I think that takes about 2 weeks normally to get used to. But the trails here are quite technical. They're famously known for being a bit gnarly in places, quite rocky and rough, and you don't really know what to expect until you get there. So I was trying to train on stuff like that at home, just imagining what it might be like. but then you get here and it is a bit different. So that's why I wanted to be here. And just every day, the plan was to see the whole course as well. And that's nice when you've got a few weeks to break it up and spread it out and then go back again to other parts if you want to a second time. So that's kind of been the plan, and yeah, why I decided to come so early.
You're entered into the 50K race. How are you feeling heading in? How's training been?
Training's been really good, actually, since the summer season. I had a couple of easy weeks after OCC and then started building up again and felt really fit coming into this. But again, there's only fitness, like you say, is only part of the equation. So it was going really well in the UK. I was feeling really fit and efficient, good uphill and everything. And then coming here, the trails are tough. So technical running is probably not my strength compared to speed or uphill or things like that. So that's been something else I've had to adjust to. So I feel a lot more confident now after being here and seeing the course. I think it's going to be feeling good for it and ready, but it's just different. It's slightly out of what I normally do. So it's hard to say for sure how I'll be under pressure and if there's some good guys there. But yeah, I'm feeling as well as I can physically.
Are there any people in the field that you're looking forward to competing with?
Well, there's a couple of guys on my team I'm looking forward to racing with, Macy and Jesh from Adidas Terrex, but I haven't really looked at I never look at who's there or anything. I just turn up and sort of run because you don't know, and there's no point worrying about like some guy who might be fast or might not be fast, and just I think you just start the race and sort of feel your way through it at the beginning and get into a rhythm. And also it's one of those races where it's very varied. So the first part is quite technical. There's some really some tough stuff, even just in the first 10K, some scrambling sections. And I think it's better just to not worry about it and just get that done and then start racing once the course smoothens off a little bit and I can get into my stride. So I've not really looked who else is racing. You probably know more about it than me.
Well, last question I have for you. I'm from the US and I do remember you competing at the North Face 50-mile race out in San Francisco, California back in 2019. And I'm not sure if you've done more of that distance since then, but you talked earlier in this conversation about the importance of going outside your comfort zone, or just the interest in going outside your comfort zone when it comes to all the different distances in our sport. Is there going to be more of that in your future? Like, what's the window for your current distance? And do you see yourself, I don't want to say evolving, but at some point transitioning to like the 50-mile, 100K, 100-mile stuff in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did try another 50-mile last year, and it just didn't quite click. I had quite a bad experience with that. And I don't know if it was just tiredness after a busy season and a lot of racing, or whether it was just the way I approached the race or training and all these things. So I don't feel it's really clicked. I mean, the time in San Francisco was actually okay. That was my first ever ultra race. I hadn't done a 50K or anything. I just went straight into that and had a good time, but just did fade quite a lot due to poor pacing, poor nutrition, all the classics. So I feel things have improved since then, but I've not had another really good go at it. So definitely, yes. I think maybe a year from now, I'll be trying something again a bit longer and hopefully getting it right. I think I need to choose the right race. I think it's difficult to jump into like a world-class 100K and then suddenly, run the best race of your life at a distance you've never nailed before. But I think I might need to start off somewhere where I can control more things and just get it right once and then take it to a bigger stage and try and replicate it again. Because at the moment I don't quite have, the last one just put me off. The last 3 hours just slogging my way through thinking like, because I really enjoy the short distances. I love running hard and I love running up climbs and really pushing the pace. But once it goes above, say 5-6 hours, then things just drop off a bit. And then it's a different kind of fitness and mental strength. So I need to really learn that potentially. But then if I try it and I hate it, I'll just go back to the short ones that I enjoy. But yeah, I want to do like even 100-mile, like Western States ones, just to experience it.
Until then, and this is maybe my last question, until then, do you see, like, is part of the mission in your career to win a race like OCC, given that you've been so close now 2 years straight?
Yeah, I mean, I never put these goals of I need to win this, I need to win that. It's just more a case of I want to do the races and feel like I've done them justice. And last year I did feel like I gave a really good result in OCC. This year I didn't. things went wrong, and I managed to get back into it again, and I'm happy with it. But I do feel like I didn't quite. The first year was great, but just that wrong turn annoyed me. So I want to go back and just nail it one more time, and then be happy with that. And then I'd like to move up to like CCC, I think.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Well, Robbie, great to chat. Great to meet. Looking forward to following your race here in a couple of days. Yeah, we'll chat soon.
Thanks very much.